How's it going, everybody? This is Clark HELLSCREAM, and today we're going to be looking at some of the most powerful cards that have come out from Scholomance Academy. We've had a lot of flavor released in this expansion, but at the same time, there's a lot of mechanics in certain cards that are not necessarily worrisome yet, but like at first glance, we already know that these cards are powerful, and now that we've had some time to kind of like, you know, look at some card reviews, see some theory crafts come together, we can kind of put these cards in like a boat about how good they're actually going to be. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. This is going to be the top 11 most powerful cards in Scholomance Academy. Number 11 is going to be Flesh Giant. The 8 mana, 8/8 cost 1 less each time your hero's health changed during your turns. So the thing about this card that I feel like a lot of people really need to evaluate before they say that this card is good or bad is the fact that this is for each time that it happens. Like, if you get hit for one and then hit again, like split damage, for example, that is one individual time to help to reduce the cost of this card. So, like, for example, there's been a zoo deck that has come out that really utilizes hurting yourself in order to either cheat mana and have these ridiculous swings, and that fits perfectly in this deck. This is probably going to go in a zoo deck more so than, like, any other kind of priest deck. But the reason why it's number 11 is because I really feel like this is going to find home in some kind of zoo or some kind of warlock that is really going to be able to utilize this card to its full extent. So for that, I'm going to put it at 11 because we have a lot of other cards that are just really, really vastly superior. So let's go ahead and check out some of those other ones. The biggest one that a lot of people have on their lookout list is Mind Render Illusia. I think that's how you pronounce it. Illusia, kind of like illusion. But yeah, it's a 2 mana 1/3. Battlecry, swap decks with your opponent until the next turn. So obviously this is combo disruption that Priest very much needed, not only in Standard but in Wild, because, you know, Quest Mages could still cheat out a lot of ways of winning the game, and at least by like turn 7 you could play this and then steal the Time Warp yourself. It's probably not the most consistent way of beating Quest Mage, but it's still a way nonetheless, and Priest had such an abysmal matchup when it came to that. But in Standard, like, there's also the application of, like, even if you're not trying to disrupt the combo, you can literally just take your opponent's cards, then switch with them, and then suddenly after they get the switch back, they don't have those cards, so you can utilize their more powerful cards. Plus, you get information on what's in their hand. So, like, this is really, really an interesting card. We really haven't figured out a way to completely break this yet. At least I haven't been able to see anything. I just feel like this is just going to be a general powerful card because Priest is going to be able to disrupt even better than it has before in the past. And it's also utilizing your opponent's cards in a different way. So it kind of fits the flavor of the class. In any case, I'm going to say that this card is number 10 compared to the others only because we haven't really figured it out yet, but it's still powerful nonetheless. Next up is a card that we've actually seen in some games and some highlights from the Scholomance reveal stream, and that is going to be Guardian Animals. I kind of under-evaluated this card when I first saw it, but number 9 is pretty well justified here. So it's a 7 mana, summon 2 beasts from your deck that cost 5 and that cost 5 or less and give them rush. So we saw Pheno try this out with Escape Mana Saber and the beast that draws 2 cards in Stealth. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's one of the new beasts that came out in this set. But in any case, like, that is absolutely amazing support already for this kind of archetype, and I really don't even know if you want to fill up a bunch of beasts in your deck, like, or at least to be able to fill that requirement, because those have such good proactive abilities in order to attack, and giving them rush gives you immediate value. Like, if you play this and you do happen to hit Mana Saber and the beast that lets you draw, then suddenly you get 2 extra cards and an extra mana in addition to those 2 attacks. So, like, I kind of thought this was going to be a meme card because maybe we could see something with, like, Knuckles and Hunter, but Druid can use this very, very efficiently. I'm not sure if Hunter can use this nearly to the same degree as Druid, and that kind of seems to be the mantra with a lot of these dual class cards for Druid specifically. But I think that Guardian Animals has a lot of ways of being utilized in a meta standpoint. Plus, with the certain 10 mana card that we'll be talking about later, I really think it's very powerful. Next up is another card that people are worried about for aggro decks. Number 8 is going to be Ferocious Reader. 2 mana 1/3 at the end of your turn, draw 3 until you have draw until you have 3 cards. So Jeeves, rest in peace. You're probably never will be played again unless you're trying to mill your opponent somehow, which really doesn't even make a lot of sense to do with Jeeves. But in any case, the reason why I decided to rate this card a little bit lower on the list is because we're still kind of figuring out if this is going to be a hyper-aggressive meta, and I think that we're starting to lean towards yes. So this is more so me being a little bit hopeful for a lot of the other archetypes than me like literally trying to see if this is going to be like the best card in the set. But this is probably one of the most powerful neutrals that has been printed from the specific expansion, because aggro just got a bunch of support. Like, even if you have this in your opening hand, but it depends on the deck that you're playing, because like if you're playing like Rogue, which has like a lot of 1 and 2 mana cost cards, like suddenly you can easily play this on turn 4, potentially for full value, depending on what your hand is, of course. So like, this card is kind of also hard to evaluate, because we need to know how good some of these other control decks will be to see if hyper aggro is going to be able to be contested with. So that's why I decided to put it a little bit lower on the list. It's definitely a powerful card though. I feel like in Wild it may have some applications as well. Disco Lock maybe could use it, but at the same time, life tapping is always a thing, and you kind of don't want to discard this card. But in any case, it's going to be powerful in hyper-aggressive decks. I fail to see how this card won't see play, because if aggro is good, this card will be good. Next up is number 7, Lord Barav. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. But in any case, it's a 3 mana 3/2, Battlecry, set the health of all other minions to 1, Deathrattle, deal 1 damage to all minions. I feel like this is kind of the most controversial pick that I will have on this list, and that's only because I really feel like Aggro Warrior or like some kind of Enrage Warrior is not going to go away. If Hyper Aggro is going to be the go-to for a lot of this meta, then that means just Warrior decks are going to be really good, right? Because of Risky Skipper combos. And literally on turn 4, one of the most important stages of an aggro deck's, one of the most important turns for aggro decks is literally going to be contested. Like, it's not consistent because it's legendary, you can only run 1, and you also need to fodder out the Risky Skipper. But it's just the way that the deck works. You still have your Armorsmith combos as well. Like, I really feel like this card is going to see play in some kind of warrior deck for sure. Paladin is a little bit on edge only because of how many different cards that they have available to them. They're still Libram, so if you're just trying to run this for the Battlecry, then, you know, it still doesn't do the greatest, and the Deathrattle really doesn't do much for Paladin specifically. But I feel like Paladin is also going to go down the either the Libram or the pure Paladin aspect, and that just, it's really hard to father this out. But in Warrior, it's so powerful that I feel like it actually will see play in Aggro Warrior, and just Risky Skipper combos are the biggest reason why. Like, it just makes so much sense, right? So hopefully it's well justified at 7. Next up, we have number 6, Jaundice Barov. 5 mana, 2/1, Battlecry, summon 2 random 5-cost minions, secretly pick one that dies when it takes damage. So I feel like, this is what everybody's saying about this card, but it's probably going to be more powerful in Rogue than it is in Mage. There's more ways of making the quote-unquote downside of this ability into a very massive upside. Because, like, if you have, like, a Deathrattle minion that you want to die, you can give it a Goblin Lackey and Galakrond Rogue and just easily run it in, having it destroyed, triggering its Battlecry. Or maybe if you get an underwhelming minion that you just give it, you give the weaker minion the Secret Death, and then you just evolve it, and then suddenly it no longer dies from 1 hit unless you get unlucky with your evolves. So, like, I feel like this card has a lot of ways of making Galakrond Rogue a little bit better in the mid game, aside from just like, oh, I'm gonna play Shield of Galakrond because it's really my only 5-cost card that really does anything. But, like, in Mage, it still could be potentially really good, but kind of like what I was saying with the Druid class cards, like, there's a lot of these class cards that really do well for one class in particular, and it does kind of help the other one. It's just not to the same extent. But, like, this card has a lot of applications in Galakrond Rogue, but it comes down to whether or not aggro is going to be a player in the meta. So we're going to have to wait and see if this card is going to be absolutely amazing, but there's a lot of hope for this card in particular. And maybe we'll even find some Mage decks that really want to take advantage of it. Alright, so these next 5 cards I believe are going to be the most powerful cards and the most meta-defining cards. And, well, no surprise, there's a lot of Druid cards up here because we've only seen 1 Druid card so far. But number 5 is going to have to go to Gibbering, because this card is just, it enables literally turn 1 wins. Like, in case you guys are not aware with how this interaction works, the Spellburst summons another Gibbering that still has the Spellburst attached onto it. So literally, if you just play spell after spell after spell after spell, this is just going to keep generating 1/1s. It's essentially like a cheaper version of Violet Teacher, except it starts as a 1/1, and then once the Spellburst is gone, then you don't have that capability anymore. But in any case, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen the Trollden clip where RDU was able to play this on turn 1 with, like, Lightning Bloom, with Power of the Wild, and with that other 1-mana card. I think it's Adorable Infestation, the one that buffs a minion and adds a cub to your hand. But yeah, like that, this is going to enable aggro druid to do so many crazy things to where token druid could very well be in the meta once again. And if aggro is really, really good, and if druid is really, really good, which is so far like two things that a lot of Hearthstone players have kind of agreed on, that I really feel like this, I mean, this card, the only reason why this card isn't ranked is because there's other cards that have such vast possibilities to enable to do absolutely crazy things. But this card only has like, okay, if you do it that one turn and turn one, obviously it's broken. But the later on in the stages of the game that it goes, it gets weaker because then AoE is possible, right? So you have to like do this into like a Soul of the Forest on like, I don't even know, like maybe like turn 3, turn 4, if you have like Innervates and Lightning Blooms in your hand. So Gibbering is just definitely a card that I feel like we have to look out for in terms of like aggro druid, but maybe aggro druid isn't as popular as some of these other druid decks that'll pop up. Kind of like with this next card that I want to talk about. Survival of the Fittest is sitting at number 4. 10 mana, give, I mean, it's kind of funny that's 4, but give +4/+4 to all minions in your hand, deck, and battlefield. I feel like this may be one of the first cards to get nerfed, and the way that they're going to nerf this card most likely is either not, it's either going to go one of two ways, right? They're either going to get rid of the buff so it's not as impressive, or they're probably going to just get rid of the buff to your battlefield, because I really feel like that's where this card kind of crosses a few lines for Druid. Because, like, the biggest thing about this card that I'm worried about is that it's essentially like another version of Savage Roar, if you really want to apply it that way. Because if you have a board, if you have any board with this card on the field, it automatically gets better. And even having, like, one minion, getting +4/+4, depending on the minion, is absolutely game-changing in some instances. But, like, the biggest thing that worries about me with this card is how easy the Druid can ramp up and cheat things with Kael'thas. Like, Kael'thas being originally printed at 6 mana must have been hell to play around this card, like, or to design around it. So, like, I really feel like this is going to be one of the most important cards that we have to keep an eye on, because if aggro does not keep this in check, this will probably break the game, in my opinion. I really feel like Survival of the Fittest is a classic Hearthstone card to where it's fun to play, but not fun to play against. So I don't like it for that reason, and I also don't like how this can just literally be played by, like, turn 4, in between turn 4 to turn 6. It's just absolutely crazy how this card can enable so many crazy druid decks. Maybe we even see like a taunt druid become popular that can really take advantage of this buff. But I really feel like just going for board, going for tempo, kind of like what we saw with Fino and Orange playing this on the reveal streams. Like this is just absolutely crazy of a card, and it has so much insane potential. And I really feel like if it's not kept in check, it will break the game. So I feel like at 4, it's very, very fair. So next up are the top 3. So at 3 is Secret Passage. I really, really, extremely undervalued this card in my first review. Because the way that I was thinking about this card is that, like, okay, so you get to play this, and then you get to swap out, like, you swap out your hand at the end, and if you didn't get anything good out of those draws, then it was pretty much like a waste, right? Well, there's a lot of builds that are being made to where you literally don't have a card more expensive than 4 or 5 mana. I think Jay Alexander ended up making a road deck to where he didn't have any 4-drops in his deck whatsoever. At least the 4-drop was the most expensive one. But in any case, like, this could very easily enable a lot of different aggro decks. And there's also the other side to where it kind of took me a minute to figure this out, but it really took Ego to explain it for me to really understand how the other way you can use this card is still powerful. So say you have Galakrond in your hand, okay? And you really need to get, like, that last Invoke, or you just really need to upgrade it one more time. You can play Secret Passage, try to get some of those Invoke cards, and then suddenly after you get them, you play them, obviously, you know, get that last Invoke, and then suddenly it switches back and you have the Galakrond back in hand. So that's another interesting way that you can utilize this card, is comboing out your decks and trying to synergize with them a little bit more, aside from just, you know, oh, I'm going to play this with my aggro deck and just play literally every single card that I get because tempo. So this card has a lot of different utilizations for sure. It's just a matter of which one's going to be most popular and most powerful. Probably the aggro one is going to be most popular because, you know, 1 mana draw 5 is just absolutely insane, especially if you play all 5 cards and you just get the absolute value from this card. So this is going to be my number 3 for this reveal, because I really feel like this card is going to put Rogue on the map, and like I've been saying throughout this video, if aggro is good, this will definitely see play in it. And also can see play in Galakrond Rogue, which is still very powerful. Number 2 is Forest Warden Omu. This was also number 2 on my meme list because there's a lot of interesting memes that you can do with this card. But like with the Battlecry this effective, or I'm sorry, a Spellburst ability this effective and this powerful, it can just enable so many things. Like I said in the last video, if you play Germation on this, you get the Spellburst on the copied minion as well. So you can easily refresh 2, maybe even 3 times if you run 3 Germations. But in any case, like, you could even, like, play this into Germation, play Mally into, like, whatever spell to refresh your mana crystals again, Germation the Mally, and then swipe in even more damage to just absolutely dunk on your opponent with the Malagos Druid. Kind of like what we've seen in the past, right? But now, like, you don't even have to go down that route. What if there's another way of just, like, cheating an entire turn with, like, Survival of the Fittest or something like that? What if there's literally an OTK that centers around Token Druid just having a board and then suddenly buffing it up with, like, Survival of the Fittest combos? I don't think that's going to be as prominent, but it's a possibility nonetheless. And, like, we got to be on the lookout for Druid. There are so many different ways that they can utilize their cards, and it just almost doesn't even seem like the other classes are on the same level, as to be honest. Like, you see Secret Passage, and you're like, wow, that's broken. That's really, really cool. And then you look at cards like Survival of the Fittest and Force Warden Omu, and you're like, wow, these have such a, not necessarily a gap, but it's like, one just seems a lot more insane than the other one, right? So because of that, I really feel like Force Warden Omu is going to be a card that's going to be utilized somewhat effectively. Like, again, if aggro is in the spotlight, which it probably will be for the first couple of days until people find some other decks, then this card won't see as much play. But I really feel like the potential for Mally Druid is so insane that we can't not include this in the list. And just OTK potential is absolutely amazing. I really feel like some people feel like this card isn't going to be that powerful, and I feel like they have some merit with that, but I feel like the potential of this card really is what's putting it in the number 2 spot for me. And next up, what is the most powerful card that we've seen from Scholomance Academy? It's Lightning Bloom. It's just Lightning Bloom. Number 1 goes to Lightning Bloom, absolutely, because it's literally just Innervate with Overload. Like, there's gonna be so many instances where, like, Druid literally doesn't care about their next turn because they're getting so much value out of this spell. And as much as I'm sad to say this, I really don't know how much application this is going to have in Shaman, because the Overload really hits them a lot harder, and you need to make sure that your tempo that you're building up for this kind of card is going to be able to cover that. But if you're playing like an aggro Druid, like we saw with Gibbering, and then you do this insane combo turn 1, you don't even care how weak your turn 2 is, because you've got so much value out of your turn 1. So I feel like Druid is going to be the class to look out for. I've been saying this ever since Survival of the Fittest got printed. But yeah, Lightning Bloom is just going to enable so many different combos, not only for aggro Druid, but for literally every single Druid deck. We may not even see Innervate in decks anymore. Like, maybe if you want to run, like, as much ramp as physically possible, if you're playing, like, Mount Sellers and stuff like that, you'll play both. But this card is just so powerful in Druid that is going to do nothing but enable them to mana cheat a whole bunch. And that's why it has to be number 1, is because this card is going to see play in every single Druid list. I guarantee it. And there you go. Those are the top 11 cards that I believe are going to be the most powerful in Scholomance Academy. Let me know what you guys think are the best cards in the set, because I know that we have a lot of them that people are looking forward to, and maybe I underevaluated one, man. Like, if I said something wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments. I would like to chat with you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and we'll see you for the next one.